She had never been late a day in her life. Not once in 12 years. Not when her tire blew on I-95. Not when her mother died. Not when she was sick with pneumonia and still showed up with lesson plans taped to her chest. Mrs. Janelle Hart wasn't just a teacher. She was the school. And this morning? This morning was no different. Except for one thing. It started with a question from one of her third graders. "Miss Hart, where the flag go?" The child pointed at the wall where the American flag usually hung, tightly taped above the whiteboard next to the alphabet chart. It was gone. Not torn. Not fallen. Just missing. Janelle smiled calmly. She'd known this would cause a ripple. "Today," she said, "we're standing for something else." She tapped her heart. The kids stood anyway. No pledge. No anthem. Just 26 kids whispering their names, their dreams, their fears. She taught them how to raise their own flag. That moment, recorded by a student on a shaky iPad, would go viral within 48 hours. But it was what happened 16 minutes later that would change her life. Janelle was reading from Crown, an ode to the fresh cut when the classroom door opened without warning. Officer Darren Kyle stepped in. He didn't knock, didn't ask, didn't smile. He walked in like someone who owned the place and expected everyone else to prove they belonged. Janelle paused mid-sentence. "Officer Kyle," she said, "can I help you?" The kids went silent. Even the air felt like it backed up. "I need to speak to you." "Now," he said, motioning with his head. She glanced at the wall clock. 10:22 a.m. She would remember that moment the rest of her life. Outside, the hallway was empty. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead made everything sound like a slow-burning fuse. "You removed the flag?" Janelle blinked. "Excuse me," I said. He repeated, slower, "Did you take the American flag out of your classroom?" Janelle stood up straighter. "I chose not to display it today. I'm within my rights." Kyle smirked. "There's been a complaint." "From who?" "Doesn't matter. Admin told me to handle it." Handle it? Like she was some kind of threat. Like 5 foot for Mrs. Hart with her afro puff and her book bag full of crayons was a gang leader. She swallowed. "You're making my students nervous. I'd like to return to class." Kyle stepped closer. "You'll come with me to the office now, or I'll be forced to escort you." "For what reason?" "Disrupting protocol." That was the moment the school's assistant principal, Mr. Dreyfus, came around the corner. Mid-30s. Avoided confrontation like it owed him money. He saw them, and turned back around. He didn't want the smoke. When she refused to go quietly, Officer Kyle made the call. 2 more officers arrived. Students peeking through windows saw their teacher being handcuffed in the hallway. No shouting, no resistance, just silence and steel. A camera phone caught it from across the hall. You can hear a kid crying in the background. "She didn't do nothing," one of them screams. "She just a teacher." The video would hit 4.7 million views in 36 hours. At the station, Janelle was processed for failure to comply with campus safety protocol. A charge that had never been enforced before. A charge that didn't exist in the school handbook. A charge that sounded just made up enough to confuse the public. Her fingerprints were taken. Mugshot snapped. Phone confiscated. But she wasn't crying. Wasn't screaming. She just sat, quietly staring at Officer Kyle from across the booking desk. "You think you won," she said calmly. "But you don't even know what day it is, do you?" Kyle raised an eyebrow. "What?" Janelle smiled. "It's March 12th. Kyle blinked. "Okay. That date mean anything to you?" He said nothing. But it did. And she knew it. Back in 2009, in a different part of the same city, a 17-year-old high school senior named Darren Kyle had been arrested outside of Lincoln High. No one talks about it. No one remembers it. Except one person, Janelle Hart. She was a first-year teacher then. Not even certified yet. Just 23 and eager. She had seen him, hands cuffed, face bruised, being shoved into a squad car outside the cafeteria. And she had seen something else. What the arrest was really about. Not drugs, not violence, but a cover-up. Because Darren had done something he shouldn't have. And the school had done something worse. Back in '09, Darren Kyle was caught breaking into a teacher's office. He wasn't stealing tests. He was planting evidence. At the request of someone else. The teacher he targeted? Ms. Lenora Hall, one of the only black faculty members at Lincoln. He had been promised a clean academic record and a letter of recommendation to join the police force if he just helped them deal with her. And it worked. Ms. Hall was fired. Her name smeared. Kyle went on to redeem himself. He became a cop. But Janelle? She remembered everything. She had kept a copy of the anonymous letter that had been slipped under Ms. Hall's door. She recognized the handwriting. She'd kept it for years. And now, she had something else. The original security footage. The tape that the school thought had been destroyed. Janelle had found it during a 2017 remodel when she was helping clean the storage room. She kept it locked away, waiting. She didn't plan to use it until he came for her. Janelle never wanted revenge. She wanted peace, to teach, to raise her students right. But when she saw her third graders sobbing behind a glass window, when she felt the cold metal on her wrists, when she realized the principal didn't even try to help her, she knew it was time. And she had more than just a tape. Janelle wasn't just a teacher. She was the unofficial union organizer, after all. She had allies, whistleblowers, parents who trusted her, alumni who owed her their degrees, and a few of them worked in places that Officer Kyle never expected, like the mayor's office, like internal affairs, like tech startups that specialized in digital forensics. When she got out on bail that night, Janelle went straight to her laptop, pulled out the drive, typed a single email. "Remember what he did to Miss Hall? I kept the proof. Time to end this." She hit send, and everything started to move. The drive was old, a beat-up SanDisk with a crack in the plastic and a rusted keychain loop. But inside it, proof. Proof of who Officer Darren Kyle really was. Not a hero, not a protector, but a 17-year-old pawn who played his part in destroying a black woman's career. And now, he tried to do the same to Janelle Hart. The difference? This time, the teacher came prepared. Her bail receipt was still warm when she got home. Janelle didn't cry, didn't undress, didn't even take off her shoes. She sat on the couch, pulled out her old teaching binder from 2009, and flipped to the hidden sleeve. The letter was still there. The handwriting? Still as familiar as ever. She snapped a photo, attached it to an email. Subject, "I have the tape." 2. Redacted, Senior Editor, City Watch Journal. CC, her former student, now a digital archivist at a non-profit media lab. She clicked send. Within 11 minutes, her phone rang. Miss Hart. The voice was shaky, almost scared. "Is this real?" Janelle paused. "You tell me." He exhaled. "You saved me in 7th grade," he said. "Remember? When I got suspended for drawing in class." She smiled for the first time that day. "Jason Booker. I remember. You told me my sketches had value." "They do," she said. Jason's voice dropped lower. "If this tape is what you say it is, this city's about to burn." In the 2009 footage, grainy but undeniable, a teenage Darren Kyle is seen sneaking into the teacher's office. He pulls out a small baggie, contents unclear, plants it inside the desk drawer, then looks up and smirks at the security camera, almost like he wanted to be seen. But here's the twist. What no one noticed back then was the second person in the hallway, just out of frame. A janitor, watching. Jason's media team enhanced the audio from a nearby hallway mic. A whisper can be heard. "Just do it. You'll be fine." The voice wasn't Darren's. It belonged to Vice Principal Harold Crenshaw, the same man who later discovered the planted evidence and had Ms. Hall fired. Crenshaw retired with honors. Ms. Hall was never able to teach again. When the footage was released to City Watch under the headline, "The Cop Who Buried a Teacher," a hidden tape from 2009 resurfaces. It only took 2 hours to go viral. People remembered Ms. Hall. Some were her former students. Others were neighbors. Others just recognized the pattern. By morning, the hashtag Justice for Ms. Hall was trending globally. Kyle goes silent. Officer Kyle didn't show up to work that day, or the next. His precinct refused to comment. The mayor's office issued a vague statement about looking into past complaints. But the internet doesn't wait for bureaucracy. And Janelle? She wasn't done. She went live. At exactly 7 p.m., 24 hours after her arrest, Janelle opened her phone and went live on Instagram. She wore no makeup, no fancy clothes, just her classroom t-shirt and a notebook in her hand. Thousands joined within minutes. She looked into the camera and spoke softly. "I'm not a hero. I'm a teacher. I've spent 12 years helping children understand their value. And yesterday, a man tried to erase mine. Not because I was dangerous. Not because I broke the law. But because I refused to stand for a symbol that doesn't always stand for us. And because I remembered who he used to be." She told the full story. About 2009. About Ms. Hall. About the buried truth. And about the child in her class who asked why she didn't hang the flag. She ended with, "Maybe the question isn't why I took it down. Maybe the real question is why you thought I didn't have the right." Under mounting pressure, the school district announced an independent investigation. They placed Officer Kyle on administrative leave. Principal Dreyfus claimed he didn't understand the full situation. A weak attempt at damage control. But the community wasn't buying it. Protests erupted at the school gates. Parents wore shirts that said, "I stand with Ms. Hart. Teach truth. You picked the wrong teacher." And then came the moment that no one expected. Ms. Hall speaks. She had disappeared after her firing, moved south, worked at a diner, raised her granddaughter in silence. But when the video dropped, someone showed it to her. And she cried. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe she wasn't crazy. That her truth mattered. That someone had remembered her name. She contacted Janelle directly, and then went public. In a heartbreaking televised interview, Ms. Hall said, "They told me no one would believe me. They said I had attitude, said I was difficult. All I ever did was care." The interview aired in over 23 cities. That's when things really changed. With public pressure mounting, the local NAACP chapter offered Janelle full legal support. But she didn't just sue the police department. She sued the school, the district, the officer, the vice principal, now retired, and every admin who had ever silenced black voices in that building. The suit, $15 million. Claim, retaliatory harassment, defamation, wrongful arrest, and institutional cover-up. People thought she was bluffing until they saw who her lawyers were. A dream team, civil rights champions. One of them had gone toe-to-toe with the state attorney general in 2021. Another had taken on wrongful conviction cases and won. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a flag. It was about every black teacher who had been silenced. Every student punished for speaking up. Every cop who thought their badge made them immune. Officer Kyle's record was re-examined. Complaints that had been dismissed were reopened. One woman came forward about racial profiling in 2018. Another claimed he falsified a report in 2020. An investigation revealed that 5 internal affairs cases had been closed without interviews. The dominoes started to fall. Vice Principal Crenshaw was publicly stripped of his retirement award. His honorary speech at the school district gala was canceled. His name removed from the library plaque. By the end of the month, the district superintendent resigned. But the most powerful part? The kids. Students started holding Stand for Something circles in schools across the city. No pledge, just storytelling. Each day, one kid stood up and said, "I'm standing for my mom who got deported, my brother who's in jail for something he didn't do, my teacher, Ms. Hart, who taught me not to be afraid." Even kids from other schools joined in. It became a movement. #IStandFor trended for 9 days straight. Janelle's face was painted on murals, not as a martyr, but as a mirror. Someone who showed the world what schools really were. Battlegrounds for dignity. But the fight wasn't over. Officer Kyle still hadn't spoken. Until he did. One grainy, late-night cell phone video surfaced from his cousin's apartment. He sat on a couch, visibly shaken. "I was a kid," he said. I didn't know what they were doing. I thought I was helping. But I see now. I wasn't helping nobody. It was meant to gain sympathy. But most people saw it for what it was. A confession too late to matter. Are you wondering? Will the case go to trial? What's the school board hiding that hasn't come out yet? Can Janelle's students remain safe in the middle of the storm she's ignited? And what price will she pay for revealing the truth? Speaking head comment below. Should teachers have the right to protest injustice in school settings? How do we protect Black educators from institutional retaliation? What would you stand for if given the mic? The city was no longer quiet. It buzzed. Not from traffic or sirens, but from tension and fear. Because the lawsuit wasn't just words on paper anymore. It was real, and it was heading for trial. Janelle Hart had shaken the very system that once crowned Officer Kyle a model of law and order. That badge was cracking, and behind it, a network of silence, corruption, and buried guilt. An unexpected ally appears. 2 weeks before the trial, Janelle got an email. No subject line, no greeting, just a sentence. He wasn't working alone. Meet me Thursday. Attached was a name, Amira Bryant. She had been a student counselor at Crest Hill Middle School in 2009. Quit unexpectedly the same year Ms. Hall was fired. No one ever knew why. Until now. Amira looked older. Lines under her eyes, a nervous tick in her hand. But her voice? Unbroken. She slid a worn folder across the table. Inside were copies of counseling reports from 2009, notes from students describing a game some boys played. They called it Flag It and Frame It. If you get a teacher fired, you win. If she's Black, double points. The name appeared repeatedly in those files. Darren Kyle. Amira said she reported it to the vice principal. She was told to destroy the files. She refused. 2 weeks later, she resigned after being accused of inappropriate conduct with a student. I never touched anyone, she said, but they didn't need truth, just a smear. She looked at Janelle and said, "You're not fighting just Kyle. You're fighting a culture." The cities divide. By now, everyone had chosen sides. Half the city saw Janelle as a hero. The other half called her a race baiter, a radical, troublemaker. Anonymous messages flooded her inbox. Some supportive, others vile. You're why our kids don't respect authority. Leave the past in the past. You brought this on yourself. But the more they tried to silence her, the louder she became. She launched a web series, Teachers on Trial. Each episode featured an educator, Black, brown, or otherwise, who had faced retaliation for challenging the system. Episode 1, Ms. Hall. Episode 2, a trans teacher from Florida. Episode 3, a Muslim principal from Ohio. Views soared. Soon, Netflix came knocking. 4 days before the court date, an anonymous Twitter account leaked a set of emails. They were from 2017, between Officer Kyle and then Superintendent Terrence Marks. One line stood out. "We can't have another Hall situation. This Hart woman needs to be contained." Contained. Like a virus. Like a threat. The emails were real. Confirmed by 3 tech journalists within 48 hours. Suddenly, Janelle's case wasn't just valid. It was nuclear. He cracked in deposition. When asked if he planted the evidence against Ms. Hall, he said, "I was young. I was pressured. I didn't know it'd ruin her life." But the room froze when the lawyer asked, "Did you target Janelle Hart because she's Black?" Kyle's lips trembled. "I didn't want to. But yeah, I knew what they wanted from me." It was the first time he admitted it out loud. And the courtroom erupted. Janelle's students testified. One by one, former and current students stood before the court. They didn't speak in legal jargon. They didn't talk like victims. They told the truth. Ms. Hart made me believe I mattered. She didn't teach fear. She taught pride. She saved my life. A 17-year-old senior named Malik paused mid-testimony, pulled out a small folded note. "She gave me this when I was 12. It says, 'You are not a mistake. You are a miracle.' I still keep it in my wallet." The judge had to call for a recess, not because of disruption, but because the court reporter couldn't stop crying. On the final day of testimony, the defense brought someone no one expected: Janelle's ex-husband, a man she hadn't spoken to in years. He had left her during her early teaching years, claiming her activism got in the way. The defense assumed he'd discredit her, but instead he said, "She warned me years ago this would happen. I didn't listen. I failed her, but I'll be damned if I fail her now." The courtroom was dead silent. Even the opposing attorney didn't cross-examine. After 7 days of deliberation, the jury returned. Unanimous. The court awarded $10 million in damages to Janelle, $3 million to Ms. Hall, ordered the city to implement mandatory racial bias training for all school staff, recommended federal investigation into the 2009 framing. Janelle didn't smile. She just looked up at the ceiling. "For Ms. Hall," she whispered, "for every one of us who never got to speak." But it wasn't over yet. 2 weeks after the trial, Janelle received another letter. No return address. Just one line, typed. "You only scratched the surface. Look into Officer Landon, 2015, Jefferson Middle." Attached, a photo of a young black boy in handcuffs, in a hallway, inside a school, with fear in his eyes. And Officer Landon, smiling. Fire what's coming next? The deeper conspiracy connecting Officer Kyle, Landon, and more. The school-to-prison pipeline exposed in shocking detail. What secrets Janelle's digging up that even the media won't touch? Comment down below. Do you believe racism in schools is more dangerous than in the streets? Why do you think some systems target black teachers who inspire resistance? If you were Janelle, would you have stayed silent or risked everything? A child, no older than 12, pressed against a school hallway wall, wrists bound in zip ties, face turned away in silent panic. And the man beside him? Officer Landon, smiling like it was a game. The same smile Kyle wore when he arrested her. Same badge. Same darkness. But this was different. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about how deep the rot went. There was no timestamp, no name, but a blurry sign in the back read, Jefferson Middle. She started there. Phone calls, emails, threats of legal action. Finally, a whistleblower, a janitor, anonymous. He met Janelle in an empty church parking lot. He handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, a disciplinary file dated 2015. Student Noah Jennings. Age 11. Incident: resisting school authority. Resolution: detained by Officer Landon. Suspended indefinitely. Transferred to juvenile facility. But something was wrong. The document ended abruptly, missing a final page. And a note was scribbled at the bottom. His mama tried to sue. She disappeared. The mother who vanished. Janelle couldn't rest. She searched through court archives, civil rights complaints, even social media history. Then she found it. A GoFundMe page, dated 2015. Help Latrice Jennings fight for Noah. It had raised only $86 before being taken down. No updates. No closure. No trace of Latrice after June 10, 2015. But a reverse search showed her name associated with one address. Oak Ridge Psychiatric Facility. Latrice speaks. Janelle lied to get in. Said she was a cousin. Said she wanted to check on Latrice. The nurse looked skeptical, but allowed a supervised visit. Latrice was seated in a small recreation room. She stared into space, humming to herself. Then Janelle showed her the photo. The boy, the hallway, the smile, and Latrice snapped back to life. Her words poured out in gasps. They came at night. Said I was unstable. Took Noah. I screamed. They made me disappear. Janelle's voice cracked. Where's Noah now? Latrice whispered. He's gone. Juvenile prison. They made him a number. Janelle had heard of the school-to-prison pipeline, but this wasn't a metaphor. It was machinery, and Noah had been fed to it. She tracked his case to Redstone Juvenile Correctional Center, a notorious private facility in rural Georgia. She posed as a journalist, drove 6 hours, Once inside, she wasn't prepared for what she saw. Rows of black boys, shaved heads, uniforms, silence, no books, no art, no therapy, just steel, rules, and broken childhoods. She finally met him. Noah was now 19, but his eyes were still 11, still trapped in that hallway. He remembered Officer Landon. He called me an animal, said he'd trained the rebellion out of me. He remembered the silence. No teacher stood up for me. Not one. They just watched. Janelle swallowed hard. What about your mom? Noah's eyes welled. I thought she gave up. Now I know she fought, and they locked her away for it. Janelle goes public again. She published Noah's story on her web series. Episode title, The Boy in the Hallway. It exploded. 1 million views in 24 hours. Hashtag Justice for Noah trended globally. And with it came more stories. Teachers who were fired for defending students. Parents silenced. Students expelled. One grandmother sent Janelle a video of a white officer dragging her grandson by the collar inside the school classroom. This happened in Canada. They said it was protocol. Another clip from France showed riot police storming a high school protest, mostly black and North African students. Suddenly, this wasn't just about one racist cop in America. This was about a global system of criminalizing black youth before they even graduate. News outlets picked it up. The Guardian, Racism in Western Schools, a Hidden Crisis. CBC, From Discipline to Detention, Canada's Black Youth Forgotten. Le Monde, Écoles OU Prisons? New York Times, Faces of Suffering, the YouTube channel exposing what schools won't say. They said your name, Faces of Suffering. And Janelle Hart? She became a symbol, a mirror. The threats returned, but with the light came darkness. Emails, messages, a brick through her window. One note was scrawled in red ink. Keep digging. You'll be next. She refused to stop. Instead, she turned her next video toward Officer Landon. Landon's day in court. Under pressure, the DA reopened multiple cases tied to Landon. Janelle's footage. Noah's story. Latrice's testimony. They couldn't ignore it. He was charged with unlawful detention of a minor, evidence tampering, perjury, criminal conspiracy. Landon pleaded not guilty. His defense? I was following policy. The system trained me this way. Janelle whispered to the press. That's the problem. The whistleblower movement. Inspired by Janelle, dozens of teachers, counselors, and administrators from the US, UK, Canada, and France stepped forward. They formed a collective EduJustice. They launched a database documenting illegal detentions in schools, discrimination in school punishments, cases of teacher retaliation, missing records, internal emails hidden by school districts. In one entry, a UK teacher wrote, "We were told to discipline aggressive postures." It turned out to mean black boys standing tall. Noah speaks at the UN. Yes, the United Nations. 6 months after his release, Noah was invited to speak at a UN Youth Justice Summit. He stood in front of world leaders and said, "I was 11 when they put me in cuffs. I was 19 when I saw freedom again. I've never known a classroom that didn't feel like a cell. But I'm still here, and I'll be the teacher they tried to bury." The room gave him a standing ovation. Janelle watched from the back, tears rolling down her cheeks. But the fight isn't over. After the summit, she received another photo, this time from France. A black girl, no more than 9, being searched by a white officer inside a school nurse's office. The caption? "Next story, if you're brave enough." And she knew. There are more Noahs, more Latrices, more hallways, more silence, and Faces of Suffering would make sure none of them are forgotten. Fire comment down below. Do you believe schools today are truly safe for black children? What should happen to educators and officers who abuse their power? Have you or someone you know ever experienced racial bias in a school system? They thought it was over. When Officer Landon was sentenced to 12 years without parole, the headlines painted it as victory. Justice served. System reformed. A new day. But Janelle knew better. The comments under her video told the real story. This happened to my son in London. Same thing happened in Toronto. Teacher called the cops on my nephew for non-compliance. My daughter was handcuffed in Paris for aggression. She has autism. The system hadn't changed. It just learned how to hide. A letter from France. The envelope came wrapped in brown paper. No return address. Inside, a letter, a school ID, and a photograph. The girl was 9, but eyes wide. The back of the photo read, "Her name is Aisha." The officer said she had drugs. They found crayons. She was expelled anyway. Janelle closed her eyes. This was the next story. Latrice Jennings passed away. So, she died inside Outrage psychiatric facility, never fully free. Noah flew out to identify her body. He left a letter tucked into her folded hands. "You fought for me when nobody else would. Now I'll fight for every child they try to erase." The lawsuit that shook the country. Together, Janelle and Noah teamed up with the EduJustice Coalition to launch a massive class action lawsuit. The defendants? Redstone Juvenile Center, Jefferson Middle School, County Sheriff's Department, Officer Kyle Landon's estate, and the private security firm EDU Guard, which had funded school resource officer training in over 500 U.S. districts. The claim? Systemic abuse of power, racial targeting, and psychological harm. It was the largest civil rights lawsuit involving youth education in U.S. history. The media dubbed it the new Brown versus Board, but global. The testimonies that changed everything. In court, stories poured like rain. A boy in Canada who was choked for walking into the wrong classroom. A girl in the UK suspended 27 times for wearing a natural hairstyle. A 10-year-old in France diagnosed with PTSD after officers forced him to kneel in front of his classmates. The world watched in horror. Janelle presented her footage. The hallway video. Noah's voice. Latrice's words. When the jury returned, they awarded $167 million in damages and demanded federal education reform. But it wasn't about money. It was about truth. She returned to teaching. A charter school invited her to design a curriculum, Civics for the Silenced. Her first day, she stood before 19 students. All black, all brilliant. She asked, "How many of you have ever been punished for something you didn't do?" Every hand went up. She nodded. "Good. You already know the system. Now let's learn how to break it." The legacy of Noah Jennings. Noah became an author. His memoir, 11 Years a Student, 8 Years a Prisoner, became a bestseller. He founded an alternative education program called Hallways of Hope, training formerly incarcerated youth to become educators. One of his students was Aisha. She had found her way back, thanks to a teacher named Janelle. Months later, Janelle received an email. No subject line, just an image. A grainy security photo of a small boy, dark-skinned, scared, gripping a teddy bear, standing in the corner of a school hallway. And beside him, a familiar face. Not Landon, but another officer. New badge. Same smile. The caption read, "It never stopped. Keep telling the stories." Have you ever been disciplined unfairly at school? What happened? Do you believe real change is possible in the education system? What should we do when teachers and officers abuse their power? Should schools even have police officers?